One of the decisions is one about which you may have read and or heard that will be made at the ballot box tomorrow, whether or not the Albion schools will stay independent or will become part of the Marshall schools. And we're here to talk a little bit about that with some folks who are involved in that. First, Vivian Davis is here, the chair of the Albion School Board. Good morning, Vivian.
Good morning.
Thank you for your time today. Also with us today is Dr. Randy Davis, the superintendent of the Marshall Schools. Good morning, Randy.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. And also with us today is Linda LaNoue, a former Albion student who joins us today as well. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you. So let's start somewhere in the past and talk a little bit about how we got here. Vivian, maybe you can do that. You can tell us a little bit about what's happened in the Albion schools that has led us to this point. And I think a fair amount of us, I should say, can relate to challenges in schools these days. We're hearing about Detroit today with a huge sick out that's basically shut the district down. Battle Creek schools dealing with declining enrollment. These are all real issues for folks that are not just in Albion or Marshall. This is happening in a lot of places. How did this happen in Albion?
Thank you. This is a part of, like you said, what is happening in throughout the Michigan. And Albion, being a small community, the declining enrollment hit hard because as soon when the students leave, money leaves, resources leaves, and all of the opportunities that our students had, even when Linda was there, we no longer have. You know, to be a self-sustaining school, you need students, and those students will bring in money. So during the past 10 years we've lost almost 100 students per year. And 100 students per year hurts a very small district as ours. In 2005, we had twice as many students as we have now.
Oh,
and the dwindling enrollment, of course, by no fault of our own, as a result of schools of choice, as a result of declining enrollment, as a result of less money. So it is something that hasn't just hit us. It's been coming a long, long time in terms of and a lot of times we have blinders on, so to speak. Oh, they're going to come back. If we add STEM, they're going to come back. If we have this initiative, they're going to come back. That didn't happen. Luckily, we had a superintendent that was in collaboration with another superintendent who was experiencing some of the same challenges in terms of student enrollment. And I'm going to let Dr. Davis talk about what happened in the superintendent's meeting when they were sharing common challenges. Dr. Davis.
Yeah, so back in 2010, we started an intentional cooperative agreement between us and Albion. The Albion board picked a couple of Albion board members, and so did the Marshall board. We formed an adjunct committee, and we started working about how can we increase opportunities regionally for our kids.
Sure.
And create better pathways. And back then, we had moved our alternative high school over to the Eastern Academic Center of KCC within the Albion district with the board's approval. We worked on how we could work together on identifying students that are more geared towards career ready as opposed to college ready, and how we could partner with our local regional manufacturing base to be able to create a pipeline for those kids to be better prepared to go into the workforce. All of that started in 2010. Now we're starting to see all of those efforts come to fruition. During the process, though, as Vivian mentioned, Jerry Lynn Harper-Williams came on board as a superintendent in 2012.
Albion superintendent. Yeah.
Albion superintendent. And in 2012, she was a great partner as we looked at, they were still struggling financially. They had a deficit elimination plan. They'd missed AYP, making the AYP marks for some time. So when she came in, she started working with, well, obviously we cannot go on this way and continue to lose the dollars we're losing and losing kids. So with some courage, a lot of courage in the Albion board and the leadership there in Albion, they decided to close their high school and seek us to enter into a cooperative agreement to provide secondary education for their kids. So in 2013, we did that. I'm sure you were aware of that process that was going on. There was a lot of naysaying that this was going to be difficult, et cetera, but it went off famously well. It's still going very, very well, and the kids are accustomed to coming together, working in a more global learning environment. It's been excellent for kids. The other piece of that is just recently in January, the Albion board invited us to expand our cooperative agreement to include the middle school in mid-year, and I've never seen a district try to do that before.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a challenge, especially when you go from high school to middle school. The level of decision-making and the impulsivity and those types of things are there as well. So we've been working through that. We believe that we've stabilized that pretty well, and kids are learning, teachers are teaching. It's all working out real well. This next step on annexation is a necessary choice that the Albion voters have, and I'm ecstatic with the fact that it's in the hands of the Albion voters, because by the will of the people, they'll make a determination if we should go forward with this annexation or not.
You talk about AYP, that's annual yearly progress. This is a benchmark that's set that students have to meet. And so I presume that as enrollment declines, then it becomes more and more difficult not only to get the money that Vivian talked about, but to make those numbers. Is that true?
Yeah, let me jump in real quick. I think that's very true. It's true, though, you can't separate the money from the achievement, because when you're saddled with that type of debt, you can't expend your resources, human, financial, time, all of that, where it needs to be to assist students. They have a great group of teachers there. They've always done a really nice job of caring for their kids and making sure their kids are taken care of through that process. But if you don't have the resources to be able to do what your vision entails, you end up on the short end of the stick.
Mm-hmm. So, Vivian, in the Albion district, then, I presume that it's been difficult for some people to conceive of the notion that their district may become part of another district. We've certainly seen a little bit of that in Battle Creek, where if a building is proposed to be closed, people have a very emotional connection to their district and to those buildings, and so sometimes it's difficult. Would you say that has been the case?
That has definitely been the case. It has been a very divisive kind of issue in terms of emotional ties to the building itself, emotional ties to the Wildcats. And Linda was a Wildcat, so she can relate to that. So that is something that I think all of us had to really wrestle with. When the high school went to Marshall, you know, we go through the emotions of that of death. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with Kubler-Ross, but there are stages of death in terms of getting to the acceptance.
Feels like a loss.
That's right. It's a real loss. And so closing a building, something that has been integrated into the core of most of our parents, most of our students, and grandparents and great-grandparents, that is definitely a loss. And the board had to realize that. We had to step back a little bit when the high schoolers went and just listen to the citizens, listen to their concerns, their fears. And the relationship with Marshall has not been one of camaraderie all the time. It has been somewhat antagonistic, especially in sports. When we would play Marshall.
Historically.
Totally, And so the idea of connecting or collaborating with Marshall and becoming a whole was just, no way will I ever accept anything like that. But once we have worked through, and the bottom line is what is most important for kids. Once we can put our own emotions aside, put our own biases aside in terms of community relations, and we look at the students, we look at what Marshall has to offer, we look at the idea that we didn't have, during first semester, we didn't have art, we didn't have music, we didn't have gym, we didn't have STEM, so when you look at what is in the best interest of kids and look at it personally, would I want my child to not have the resources that will prepare them for a global society? then you have to kind of step back, put the emotions aside, and look at the realities of what could be versus what they have right now.
We're talking about what will happen in Albion at the ballot box tomorrow, a decision whether or not Albion Public Schools will become part of Marshall. And we'll come back in just a minute and talk more about that on WBCK. We've been hearing today from Vivian Davis, who's the chair of the Albion Schools Board of Directors. As well, we've been talking with Dr. Randy Davis, the superintendent in Marshall. Tomorrow, you have a decision if you're in that district in Albion to become part of Marshall or not. And so that decision will be made by the voters in Albion. And it's interesting, Vivian, you made the point that that there has been a lot of emotion surrounding this, but that eventually you put the emotions aside and you try to decide what's best. Linda LaNoue is here. You're a Albion Schools graduate.
Yes,
went on to
2009.
Michigan. 2009. All right. So then you went on to Michigan State.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I actually recall in 2013 hearing that the high school was closing and going to meet with Dr. Harry Bonner, a mentor of mine, and he mentioned that obviously there are community-wide issues if a high school closes. Vivian spoke on lack of enrollment and different things happening, but I think that there is something to be said about Albion coming together as a community to help progress and accept where we're at and then grow. And I think that we're seeing a lot more opportunities to do that with the cooperative agreement with Marshall. I know after, having graduated in 2009, now there's the Build Albion Fellows program, and Marshall High School offers a lot more clubs and activities and classes that I didn't have offered to me. So I think that there's a lot to be excited about going forward.
So it seems like a good decision to go forward with this to you.
Yes. I know if I had access to those opportunities, I definitely would have taken advantage of them. And having spoke with students that are there now, that they really enjoy like culinary arts, and they have a greenhouse and a number of things that you just can't do when you don't have the student enrollment.
Were there emotions for you that might have suggested otherwise? Yeah.
Yeah, I was extremely sad when I heard the high school close. I was in shock, though. It was kind of like the process of grief, and I think just taking a step back and seeing, what is available now and how that actually can benefit students more than, say, what I had. When I came to Michigan State, I had a hard time adapting to the global aspect that just wasn't provided in Albion.
Culture shock of sorts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As much as I love being a Wildcat, I think that, we have to be as competitive as we can now, because it's a global, the global scale is here on the local level also.
Our time is fleeting, but I want to give you a chance to talk about both sides of this. So let's suppose this passes tomorrow. Randy, what does that mean for Marshall?
We all get busy. And I think one of the things I wanted to say is that we have been working towards a PK-16 district model. That's pre-kindergarten all the way to grade 16 or 4 years college degree. We've done that through a lot of partnerships, both with our local manufacturing base, the work that we're doing with the Michigan Youth Challenge Academy, and now the Job Challenge program, as well as our work with Kellogg Community College and Eastern Academic Center, and now with Albion College. And Dr. Ditzler and I have been working closely together, not only about the Build Albion Fellow Scholarships for our kids that have been educated and reside in Albion, but also we're embarking on a new local talent tracking for getting local talent into the educational arena so they can start teaching in our classrooms. I think that's really an innovative move in this PK-16 model. So after the vote, we get busy. We're going to have a number of community forums to talk about different logistical issues like the buildings and what to do with the 4 buildings they still own, where are we going to operate our services, what are those services going to be. We're committed to making sure that there's a kindergarten through PK through 5th grade elementary school in Albion, because I do believe in a community-centered school. It's necessary for the health of the community to see that. And to be able to have our little children educated close to home. So we'll be doing that, and then we'll be working on coordinated services from that point forward.
So you'll have all of those questions, logistics and other things to figure out, but if it passes tomorrow, is it an immediate effect?
Actually, thank you. The language in the ballot is if it passes tomorrow, it takes effect July 1.
Okay.
And so we'll be working in tandem with those that are still in Albion in the school district, working along with the Department of Treasury as well to make sure that everything gets tied up.
Vivian, what if it doesn't pass? What happens for Albion?
Just the opposite. We have to work. We're under the auspices of the Department of Treasury now. So we would have to develop a plan or present a plan. It is not left up to the Albion Board of Education whether we charter or whether we, do what dissolve or whatever. The Department of Treasury really has the power in terms of you are sustainable or you're not sustainable as an entity. So, we will lose out on a lot if it doesn't pass. We can still, try to provide a shell of an educational system, but it will be a disservice to our students, I think, if we don't have the resources that Dr. Davis has talked about.
Mm-hmm. And you might have guessed by listening to Vivian speak, but the Board of Education in Albion has advocated for the passing of this.
The Board of Education has advocated 6-1.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, tomorrow's the day, and the voters will decide.
Thank you.
All right. Best of luck to all of you, and we appreciate the time you've given us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. 8:20.